Got it.
Got it.
So everybody who's not me, could you please mute yourselves?
Mute.
Yes, go on mute. Thank you very much. We just love to be able to only hear the tellers. My name is Sarah Armstrong, and I'm the chair of Storytelling Association of California. And I welcome you to our genre session for tonight, focusing on folk tales and fairy tales. We have 7 tellers to amuse and delight you, and I'm just looking forward to such a lovely evening. Now, for those of you who know about genre, this will be familiar. For those who don't, this happens every month on a different theme. And when you go to the Storytelling Association of California website, go to the genre tab, and you can sign up for any of the series that are listed. You will see the different categories for each of the months. So as I said, this is folk and fairy tales, and we're delighted that you're all here. Another tradition that we've started recently is to have a guest teller. Usually the genre has representation from our swap groups throughout California. And then we've been inviting a guest teller from somewhere in the world to join us. And tonight, our first storyteller and our special guest for tonight is Preti Gya Haran. Preti Gyara's work goes by the name Story SAC. She has been telling stories professionally for about a decade. However, she has really been telling stories all her life. And she has recently started telling personal tales a lot more. Now, I've asked all of the tellers to tell me their favorite character from folk or fairy tales. And Preti Gaya said folk tales that have been passed on from one generation to another. So she loves them all. That's lovely. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Preti Gaya. Please tell us your story.
Thank you, Sarah. A very good morning to all of you from here in India. Today's story was told to me by a friend, and I believe it's been passed on over 4 generations, this story, and that's why I chose this story to tell you today. Ramu and Lakshmi were a young couple who lived in a village. Now, as a temple priest, Ramu did not have much of earnings, but they knew how to be happy with whatever meager they had. If there was one thing that Ramu really, really loved, that was music. So every fortnight, he would invite these musicians, classical singers, folk singers, instrument players over to the temple to perform. And what would follow was a very, very warm invite to come to his small little house for a simple meal. His wife, Lakshmi, also played a very good host. She would be warm and respectful towards them and cook the best meal that she could with whatever little money they had. But it didn't just stop there. When the guests would say, "Thank you very much, it's time for us to leave," Ramu would say, "No, no, no. How can you leave? You just came now. Why don't you rest the night today? Sleep here at my place." And the next morning, again, when they said it's time for us to leave, goodbye, he would say, "No, no, no. How can you just leave? You have to eat breakfast. You know, my mother would always tell me, never leave home on an empty stomach." And this would go on. Now, everything went really well for the first few years, or should I say almost 8 to 10 years. But then the family size grew, but their income did not. So now, when Ramu continued inviting people fortnight after fortnight, once in a while, Lakshmi had to go empty stomach or hungry in order to feed them. Now, she put up with this inconvenience, but when it came to a situation where her 3 children had to go hungry for the same reason, she was not happy about it. So once, very hesitatingly, she suggested to Ramu, Ramu, it's not like the temple doesn't pay these musicians well. Do we really have to invite them month after month or every single fortnight? But Ramu was aghast. He said, Lakshmi, how can you even think of something like this? These guests, they are like the divine himself. We should consider ourselves to be extremely lucky that they come to our humble abode. You should never bring these thoughts in your mind again and never poison your mind with these. We should continue to be grateful. But Lakshmi clearly was not grateful, especially because now that these guests started taking advantage of Ramu and his invitations. And so she decided, it's time to take things in my own hands. The next fortnight, there were these special musicians called from Terukut or Kutupatre, where they wore these very colorful costumes. They had these huge wooden accessories and masks, and they performed all night, singing and music and movement, all of it put together. Ramu settled down for this. He had not watched one earlier. This was the first time he was seeing it. And the musicians started. தெய்வம் என்பதை சொல்வேன் தெய்வம் என்பதை சொல்வேன் இந்த ஜகத்தில் பூஜ பலம் மிகுத்தன தந்தையே தெய்வம் என்பதை சொல்வேன் தன்னை அழைத்த தாய் அவள் ஒரு தெய்வம் தகுமை பெற வளர்த்த தந்தை ஒரு தெய்வம் வன்மையுடனை தலையோடினோர் தெய்வம் வறுமையை அகற்றி வெற்றோர்கள் ஒரு தெய்வம் தெய்வம் என்பதை சொல்வேன். Ahaha, Arpudam, Arpudam, amazing, amazing. Ramu couldn't stop praising them. He went on and on. It is as if Goddess Saraswati herself was singing, oh, you are the best musicians I've seen till today. And of course, he invited them over for a meal. These guests had heard a lot about Ramu and his amazing invites, and they were looking forward to it. Ramu rushed home and he said, Lakshmi, I have invited these 3 musicians home. I will just rush to the river, have a quick bath and come, and you prepare your wonderful meals that you always do. They will be home any minute now. Lakshmi nodded. She rushed to the kitchen and she cooked the best feast ever. There was rice and sambar and rasam and poriyal and other rasam, and you name it, she had all of it ready. And then when the guests arrived, she humbly invited them in and seated them on the floor. She laid down banana leaves ready to seat them, to serve the meal. And she said, you please get comfortable. Ramu is just gone to have a bath. He'll come very quickly. And then she went into the kitchen. She called out to her kids, just loud enough so the guests outside could hear. Kanas, come inside, come quickly. The 3 children rushed in. She took a ball of cooked rice and molded it into a shape. And she did this with 3 balls. One of them was molded into a singer, another one into a drummer or a mridangam player, and the third one as a cymbals player. These 3 molds were ready, and she told the kids, okay, each one of you tell me what will you have today. Today is one of those special feasts, you know, your father invites people. And the kids were excited. And the oldest one said, Amma, I will eat the mridangam player, the drummer. The drummer outside heard this. His ears pricked, but he didn't think much about it. He let it go. And the second one said, Amma, I will eat the singer. The singer outside heard this. And he was a little amused. Did I hear that right? Eat me? How strange. And the third one said, Amma, I will eat the cymbals player, please. Now, all 3 of them stared at each other, amused, a tiny bit worried, and completely confused. What is happening? But what really confused them the most was when Lakshmi stepped outside. She went to a corner of the room and she sat down praying to a mortar and pestle. She was singing mantras, she was offering sweets, she was offering garlands and flowers, and finally she went prostrate, finishing her prayer with a mortar and pestle. Now the three musicians were wondering what in the world is happening. The singer couldn't control himself anymore, and so he went up to her and he said, why are you praying to a mortar and pestle? Lakshmi looked at him apologetically and said, please don't ask me this. Ramu has forbidden me from telling you anything about it. But the singer wouldn't take no for an answer. No, no, I insist. You need to tell me, why in the world are you praying to a mortar and pestle? Lakshmi looked at him again and she said, once a year, Ramu uses this mortar and pestle to crush the guests that come home and offer it to his children. And she rushed back into the kitchen, quietly, really fast. The three of them just stared at each other. They didn't have to say a word. They picked up their bags and quietly tiptoed out of the house using the back path. And guess who arrived? Ramu, of course. He had just returned from his bath and he saw those three empty seats and he thought, I think I saw three people walking out. Lakshmi, where are the guests? Have they not arrived? Have they left? What happened? Lakshmi rushed out of the kitchen in a very irritated look on her face. What kind of guests do you invite home, Ramu? What kind of guests? What do you mean? You know your guests, they make such weird demands, I tell you. Ramu scratched his head and he said, what demands? What did they ask for? You see this mortar and pestle? Can you imagine? They wanted me to give this to them. Don't they know we are quite poor? We can't afford to buy another mortar and pestle. And how in the world will I do the cooking and pounding and crushing without this? Your guests, I tell you, are very strange at times. But all that Ramu could think of was, what is wrong with you, Lakshmi? Didn't I tell you a few days ago? These guests are the form of divine themselves. Whatever they ask for, you should be willing to give it to them happily. You just wait right here. I will rush outside, apologize to them, and bring them back. You warm the food and keep it ready. Lakshmi nodded her head. And out rushed Ramu. Calling out, he ran and he saw three of them really far away. And he said, wait for me, please, please listen to me. At least half the meal. Please wait for me. From far away, the three musicians heard a noise. They turned around and what did they see? Ramu, carrying the mortar and pestle on his head, still adorned with those flowers, and rushing and chasing towards them. And what they thought was chasing towards them for their death. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I had no idea where that was going. What a lovely story. Thank you, Pratigya. That's just fabulous. Thank you for sharing. And my friends, our guest here is from India, as you heard, and so she is just starting her day. So I'm going to ask her to tell us if she has storytelling events or other things coming up that she'd like to share with us, and then we'll let her go. Please.
Yes, Sarah, before I move to that, a little bit about the story itself, if you don't mind.
Please.
As I told you, this story I heard from a friend of mine, Radha Chitturu, which was passed on 4 generations over, and that's how I heard this story first. And the song that I sang is from South India, where I stay, although I'm not a native of this part of the country. So it's a Tamil song. I'm not a native Tamil speaker. But I had the opportunity to attend a workshop by a Kooth Patturai group here in Chennai. I'm musically deaf, yet Rajagopalaya managed to teach me this song. And I chose this particular story so I could bring this song in and, bring in a little bit of learning that I had done. And a big thank you to Rajagopalaya for teaching me this song and not taking no for an answer.
It was lovely. It was just lovely. So we hope you're going to sing more. Keep bringing songs into your stories. It was just lovely.
I hope so too. And yes, coming to my work, I have been doing storytelling, especially during COVID is when I started online. So besides my usual work, I have been doing these monthly online sessions called Stories and Conversations, which are usually India time, 8 to 9 p.m., where I invite people to come and join me. The basic structure is such that I tell a story and then the rest of the time is opened up for conversations. And invariably, it involves a lot of discussions, a lot of memories get triggered, and the audience are invited to talk a lot more than I do. So if that is something that would interest you, then yes, please to come over. It's called Stories and Conversations. Maybe I'll share it with you, Sarah, and then if you feel like it, you can share it with the group.
Okay, that would be lovely. It just sounds delightful. Thank you so much. And have
Thank
a
you for being a lovely audience, and a big thanks to Ed for inviting me over. Thanks a lot, Ed.
and thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Pleasure.
Wonderful. Well, our next storyteller is also from India, Renu Narayan, who many of you have seen and loved in past genres and other online sessions. She's a passionate storyteller, hoping to bring about peace and hope through the stories she tells. She's the founder of Kata Vrish, an initiative to promote storytelling and training. And she's here representing the Contra Costas Tale Spinners. Now she's going to tell us a story called the Tapibai, Parvatibai, and the Dacoits. And this character, the protagonist, is portrayed as a witty and kind woman. And that was the answer to the question, what storytelling character do you really like? So now I'll turn it over to Renu for our delight. Thank you.
Namaste, everyone. A very good morning. Oh, I forgot. It must be evening for you. Let me introduce myself. I am Parvati Bai. I live in a small village in Maharashtra. You know where Maharashtra is? It's in the western part of India. Now, my village is pretty small and isolated. And close to our village, there is a mountainous area with a forest kind of a place. And this is where the dacoits live. And you know what they do? Every now and then they attack some house or the other in the village. And they have the audacity to write a letter before they actually enter the house. They write a letter and say, today we are coming to your house. You better keep everything ready. So far, they have not come to our house. I'm very happy. But today my husband came home. His hands were shaking. His face was sweaty. I asked him, Papa Rao, what is the matter? Why are you shaking and shivering like this? Are you unwell? Shall I bring some water for you? He said, Parvati Bai, stop all this nonsense. I'm not unwell. I'm very, very worried. Why are you worried, Papa Rao? Share it with me. I'm your wife. Of course I know your wife, my wife. Shit. Leave me alone now. But what is wrong? Tell me. What is wrong? I have received a letter. What letter? Why are you so angry about a letter? Is somebody coming to come and stay with us? Parvati Bai, the dacoits have sent a letter. They're coming to our house tonight. Oh, they have finally decided to come to our house, is it? What can we also do? We cannot defend them with muscle power. We only have to think with our wits. Wits and wits, what rubbish. We can only do with our muscles. I have decided all the men will go to the entrance of the village and we will fight with those gundas. Are you sure, Bappa Rao? You know, they have weapons, they have guns, they have swords. How are you going to fight, Bappa Rao? Leave it to me. Don't say anything at all. You and your wits, just stay at home now. I'm going. He squared his shoulders, though I knew actually he was very scared inside. He left. I thought to myself. A thought had come into my head. What shall I do? I think I can put it into action. So I left. I went out of my house. I went and knocked on all the houses. I called all the women out to my house. They all came and we went into the kitchen. Soon there was sound of vessels. Damal, dimil, dumul. We all started to cook. The fragrance of cooked food came out of the kitchen. There was rice, all kinds of delicious dishes. We were preparing dish after dish after dish. And just before midnight, I went into my room. I wore my best sari. I did my hair. I wore my bindi and I thought I looked nice. Then came the knock on the door. Dum, dum, dum. My heart was fluttering. But still, I put a smile on my face. I went and opened the door. And there stood the dacoit. Tall, big man, the big mush. I smiled and I said, Ba, you've come to my house. Come in, come in. Stop all that. Let me in. You know why I've come. Yes, Bob, yes, I know. But please come, please come. Three of them came into the house. Sit down, Bob. We have not come to sit down. Give me your gold. No, no, Bob, please sit. We have some food for you. Look very tired and hungry. Sit, Bob. Hmm. Then the smell of the food attacked his nostrils. He looked at his friends. They all sat down. We placed plantain leaves in front of them. Then we served them dish after dish after dish, and they were eating. Very nice. Very nice. You like that, huh? What about this? Let's ask for more. But before they could ask us, we were serving them dish after dish, and they were eating and eating and eating. Finally, oh, the leader had stomach was full. He stood up. Okay, we are leaving. Oh, bow, wait. I said, here, please take. This is what you came for, isn't it? Here, I've left all my plate. I've left all my jewelry in my plate. This man, you call me Bow, your brother. How can I take your gold from you? No, Behan. Keep it. With my blessings, keep it. I will not come to your house again. Please keep it, Behan. Thank you, Bow. Thank you. Bow? Yes, Ben. Did you meet some men outside the village? Yes, some fools are there. They tried to fight with us. We just tied them to some trees. Yeah, Bow, can you please let them go? It's my husband and all the friends. Oh, is that it? Okay, I will let them go. I will come and leave them back. Don't worry, Ben. I will take care of them. They left the house. All of us smiled at each other. Quickly, we cleared up everything. All the women went back to their houses. I also cleaned everything. But before I could change my clothes, dum, again knock on the door. I went and opened. It was my husband. Bapparao came in. Ho, Parvati. I don't know what happened to those dacoits, They came and let us go and they said, don't worry, we will never come to your village again. Looks like our attack was very successful. I said. Then he looked at my dress. Parvati, why are you dressed like this? Are you going for a wedding? Papa, this is what happened this evening. And I told him the whole story. Oh, you're very smart, Parvati Bai, very clever. Wits, very good, very good. It was not my wits, Bapara. These dacoits had never experienced love and respect. This is what they received this evening. That is why they left us in peace. You see? Oh, okay, Parvati Bai. And that is the end of my story. Thank you.
Oh, just wonderful. That was just delightful. So powerful with the women coming together, making the food, and as you said, offering the respect. I love it. Thank you so much, Renu. Just beautifully done. Thank you so much. And our friend Renu is also in India starting her day. So I want to give her time to talk about where we can see her again, or whatever she'd like to share with us.
Yes. I have an initiative called Katha Bridge. It means a story tree. I have a monthly session where I invite tellers to come and tell stories. Also, somebody from outside India as well. Many of people from Contra Costa Tales Pillars have come and shared a story. And anybody is welcome to come and share. I have been inviting consistently, but sometimes it's difficult to know who would be interested because time also, there's a time difference. When it's 8 o'clock in the evening for us, it's about 6:30 in the morning for you, I think. So it depends on whether you're interested in joining at that time in the morning. Of course, any of you is welcome to come and join us. I will share the link with one of you if you all want. And yeah, I've constantly organized something or the other. Recently we had a children's storytelling festival for the very first time in Chennai that happened in August 19th to 24th. We are hoping to take it international next year. Hoping to invite international tellers to come to Chennai. And apart from that, I also travel. I went to Korea, South Korea recently to attend the Feast conference. Feast is an organization based in Singapore, Federation of Asian Storytellers. It was a wonderful experience. I met many storytellers. I met Brandon Spars, who's from Do Tell Stories Swamp, which was a wonderful experience. It was lovely because I attended workshops. I learned a lot. There's so much to storytelling that you can keep learning for the rest of your life. So it was fantastic, and I'm also looking forward to attending more conferences all over the world because it's a lovely tribe. All the storytellers are wonderful people. It was really a very good experience for me, and now I'm going to Pune and Mumbai again to share stories. It's lovely. I love it. Thank you.
Well, you are so lovely yourself and so wonderful to listen to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Lovely. Well, our next storyteller is Laura McHale Holland. And she's coming to us from Do Tell Story Swap, which is in the north of here. Laura is a writer, editor, storyteller, an award-winning indie publisher of 7 books. She had the good fortune to go through the former Certificate of Storytelling program run by Ruth Stoddard at Dominican College, and I know some of you have been part of that as well. And while she spends more time keyboarding than telling these days, always with a pot of strong black tea nearby, she feels like she's coming home whenever she gathers with a group of folks who are caught by the storytelling bug. And Laura's favorite character is the Snow Child because she's so mysterious and her story is told in many different ways, which leaves it to the storyteller to shape how she's going to share that particular story. The story today she's telling us is called The Edge of the World. Laura, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting this, and to the Storytelling Association for putting on this wonderful program. The story is The Edge of the World is from the British Isles, and I saw Richard Walker tell this at the Bay Area Storytelling Festival back in the 90s. And so here it goes. There once was a young man who lived high on a mountain top. He lived in a fine redwood house. Just imagine the gorgeous views he had. And he was healthy and good looking, but he was disgruntled, dissatisfied. He felt like his life was empty and that he just didn't have any luck. He thought about that. How could he get some luck in his life? And he didn't come up with any answers. So he went down the mountain a little ways to the wise woman, and he asked her, why was it that he didn't have any luck? And she said, I can't answer that. Only God knows the answer. Well, where's God? He said. Well, God's at the edge of the world. So he set off. And he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And he came to a clearing. And on his left was a pack of healthy, vibrant wolves with shiny fur, bright eyes, strong teeth, and they were eyeing him. And on his right was this scraggly, feeble wolf with patches of hair, lots of bald spots, shaking. And the wolf said, well, where are you going? Well, I'm going to the edge of the world to ask God why it is I have no luck. Well, when you're there, could you ask him what I can do to be strong and healthy so that I can be accepted by my pack? I'll be happy to do that. So he set off and he walked again. And he walked for a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And he came to this gorgeous forest with trees that rose high to the sky, and they were full of branches with beautiful leaves. And he watched one leaf fall down to the ground. It landed at the feet of this pint-sized, scrawny little tree. And the tree said, where are you going? I'm going to the edge of the world to ask God why it is I have no luck. Well, when you're there, could you ask God why it is I'm so tiny and I just can't grow like all the other trees? Well, I'll be happy to do that. And he set off. And he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And he came upon this lovely white cottage with a white picket fence with flowers blooming of all different sorts and colors. And he walked up and he knocked on the door, and a beautiful woman answered, and she welcomed him in, gave him a little snack, and she said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to the edge of the world to ask God why it is I have no luck. Well, when you're there, could you ask God why it is I'm so very lonely? I'll be happy to do that. So he set off again, and he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And there he was at the edge of the world. And he said, God, I am so glad to see you up there in that cloud. I got to know why it is I have no luck. Stupid, stupid, God said. I've given you all the luck you need. It's everywhere. All you have to do is look for it. Oh, okay. Oh, I have some other questions. I know, I'm God. And God came down floating and whispered all the answers to the people, the creatures and stuff he met along the way. And so he thanked God and off he went. And he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And he was back at the cottage. And the young, beautiful woman welcomed him and she fed him a wonderful meal. And he said, This is the best meal I've ever had. She said, Oh, I'm so glad. Um, did you happen to find out from God why it is I'm so terribly lonely? Why, yes, I did. You're so lonely because you need a husband. If you get a husband and have some family, you will not be lonely anymore. Well, will you be my husband? Oh, no, no, I don't have time for that. I have to press on and look for my luck. So he set off and he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And there he was, back in that gorgeous forest with those trees. And there was that scraggly pint-sized tree. He said, Well, uh, did you happen to ask God why it is I am unable to grow like the other trees? Why, yes, I did. There's a treasure chest buried right at your roots, and all you have to do is get somebody to dig that up for you, and you will grow fine. Your roots will get the nourishment, and you'll grow strong and tall. Well, there's some tools right nearby. Could you dig that treasure chest up for me? Oh, no, I'm afraid I can't do that. I don't have the time. But I will send the first strong person I see along the way to come and help you. So he set off, and he walked a day, a week, a month, a year and a day. And there he was back at the clearing, and there was that feeble wolf. Did you happen to find out how I'm going to get strong and healthy and accepted by the other members of the pack? Why, yes, I did. All you have to do is eat the first stupid animal you see. And that's the end of the edge of the world.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That poor guy. Luck was all around him, as you said. So I'm going to ask you to wait until we're finished with everyone to share what it is that you have coming next. But I want to thank you so much for your story. So well told. Thank you. Our next teller is Camille Miller. She's representing Story Masters. She is a two-time Toastmaster District Champion, poet, and storyteller. She enjoys personal stories, but has recently fallen in love with folk tales. She has spoken everywhere from the church house to the jailhouse. She spends her days peeking in bushes and climbing over clouds in the endless pursuit of the next great story. Now, Camille says that one of her favorite characters is Jack in Jack and the Beanstalk. She says, technically he was a thief, but I like the idea of a son caring about his mother. That poor duck, though, it had to have been painful laying golden eggs. So Camille, the floor is yours.
This is a story of Old Joe and the Carpenter. So let me tell you about old Joe, who lived along the countryside all by himself, no wife, no kids. But he had a good friend who lived just across the field, who also lived by himself, no wife, no kids. And they were really good friends. I mean, buddies. They did everything together, and there was no secrets between them. But one day, a terrible thing happened. What sometimes happens between two good friends, you see. Joe and his friend were walking along the country road, and they saw a calf in the other neighbor's field. And the friend said, "Hey, Joe, look over there. That's my calf." And Joe said, "Oh, no, friend, you're mistaken. It is all the markings of my cow. It's my calf." And the friend said, "I know my calf. It is certainly my calf." And Joe looked at him and says, "Where are your glasses, friend? It is the markings of my cow. It is my calf." So instead of fighting one another, they decided to turn their backs, go home, slam the door, and never talk to one another again. Isn't it a terrible thing when two good friends get in a disagreement over something as small as a cow? A baby calf? Well, several months later, Joe, of course, was alone in his house, and he was drinking coffee black and oatmeal plain when he heard a at the door. And he thought, perhaps that's my friend come to his senses. After all, it was his fault, and it is my calf. So he strolled slowly to the door and opened it up. And he looked out to find a young man with the kindest brown eyes you'd ever seen in your life. And next to him was a toolbox. And he said, "Sir, I'm looking for work. I'm really good with my hands. Do you have any work around the farm?" And Joe thought to himself for a minute, because you see, just several weeks earlier, the friend had created a creek between his property and Joe's. So Joe said, "As a matter of fact, I do. I would like you to build me a fence, a very high fence, between that neighbor and I." Yes, sir, get right on that, sir. Build your fence. That's it, yes, sir. So Joe decided to load up his carriage and go to the market for victuals. And just before leaving, he turned to the young man and says, "Remember, young man, build me a fence, a very high fence." And off Joe went to the market. The young man, he pulled out the supplies, the lumber and the nails and the hammer and the saw and the measuring tape. And he measured and he sawed and he measured and he sawed and he nailed and he built and he nailed and he built and he worked straight through lunch, which is something I would never do. And he nailed and he built and he nailed and he built all the way till dusk. And that was just about the time that old Joe was coming home. Old Joe was excited. "I'm gonna get a fence." He even began to sing to himself. "I'm gonna get a fence, and he's gonna build it high. He's gonna build a fence high enough to touch the sky." He's gonna build a fence. He's gonna build it high. He's gonna build a fence between that neighbor and I. So as Joe gets closer and closer to home, he doesn't see a fence anywhere, until finally he stops at his house, gets off his carriage, and turns to see a footbridge. And on it was his friend with tears streaming down his face and his hand in front of him. You see, his friend thought that Joe had the footbridge built so that they would become friends again. And Joe, seeing his friend, allowed the tears to flow down his face with his hand in front, and he ran to his friend and they caught one another. And his friend said, "Oh, Joe, I'm so sorry. It was my fault. He's your calf. You can have him." And Joe said, "No, friend, I was mistaken. It was your calf all along. You can have him." And they began to hug and become friends again. And while they were hugging, the young man picked up his toolbox and began to walk away. And Joe said, friend, where are you going? I have much more work for you around the farm." And the young man said, "Oh, no, sir. My work here is done. I have many more bridges to build." And with that, he put his hat on his head and went whistling down the road. And that is the story of Old Joe and the carpenter.
Oh, Camille, that was just lovely. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're moving into folk tales and fairy tales along with your personal work. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll wait till the end to hear what's next for you as well. Thank you. Well, our next storyteller is Emily Stamets, who comes to us from the Storytellers of San Diego. Emily is a storyteller specializing in an original fantasy with modern feminist twist. A dynamic and theatrical storyteller, she brings almost 3 decades, no, you're not that old, 3 decades of theater arts experience to the stage. She lives near San Diego with 30-ish chickens, 2 cats, 2 moms, 1 husband, and a sourdough starter. So Emily says that Rapunzel is her favorite tale paradigm and her favorite to twist into new tales. Today she's telling us planting an apple tree. Emily, please.
Thank you so much. So today I'm going to tell you a story that comes from a place that's very special down here in San Diego County. It is called Julian, and it's up in the mountains in like East San Diego County. And Julian's really special. It was the only gold rush town in Southern California. So folks came after Fred Coleman discovered gold here in 1869. And there was a gold rush here for about 30 years after that. But what the real gold that came to Julian during that time was that folks saw what the beautiful soil there was up there and the beautiful, cool climate, which was unusual for Southern California. And so they started to plant apples. So today, Julian is actually known as a center of apple pie and apple growing in Southern California. It's one of the only places you can grow apples. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of the oldest apple tree in Julian, California. And this tree is a little special, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, I can't tell you where this tree is because you see it's not in one of the beautiful orchards we got here in Julian. It's kind of smack dab in the center of someone's property. And they don't want a bunch of folks coming around, ogling at the oldest apple tree in Julian. So we keep the location a little bit secret. You see that apple tree was planted smack dab in the middle of the marketplace. Now, Julian, as a gold mining town, was a little different than some of the gold mining towns out in Northern California. See, in Julian and those other towns, you got mostly men. You got the miners. You got the men wanting to sell stuff to the miners. But in Julian, you got the miners, and you also got their families. So you had women and you had children. You had business owners and makers and artists all kind of gathered together in this small place. And so they would get together, as people do in small places, once in a while to have a market. And folks would come with the stuff they'd made, the axe handles, the fabric, and folks would come with stuff they grew, the apples and the vegetables. And those miners and those business owners would come with their pockets heavy with gold nuggets and gold dust. And folks there, they would trade goods for gold and gold for goods. Well, on one of these market days, Randall came in. Now, Randall was a big guy, biggest guy in Julian. He was tall, taller than an apple tree. And each of his arms and legs was thick as a tree trunk themselves. And on this day, Randall thumped his way into that marketplace, carrying a heavy wheelbarrow behind him. Now, this wheelbarrow had been packed with the shiniest, juiciest apples you've ever seen. There were apples on that wheelbarrow that were green like fresh grass, And there were some that were the yellow of a cat's eye, and some that were a purple so dark it was like looking at the night sky in Julian on a night with no moon. And Randall, he had packed that wheelbarrow perfectly because he knew the value of each of those apples and he didn't want any of them to topple out. So not a single apple toppled out, even as Randall thunk, dropped that wheelbarrow right down into the dust, and the dust up around his feet. And Randall took to calling out, "Apples, apples, y'all know I got the best apples here in Julian. Come and get them, the juiciest, the sweetest, the shiniest apples you've ever seen." Now, Randall knew the value of each of those apples, and he charged a high price for those. But people also knew the value of each of Randall's apples, and they were happy to pay that price. So they gathered around and they were trading Randall their goods and their gold for those beautiful apples. And suddenly, everyone popped their nose up into the air. Oh, because you see, you could always smell her coming before she got there. And then you could hear thunk, thunk, thunk. It was old lady Gravenstein. See, old lady Gravenstein, she was a little different from most of the women there in Julian. See, those women, they were wearing calico and gingham, light colors to keep the sun off, clothes that were easy to work in, a little, tight around the legs, easy to work in, easy to clean. But old lady Gravenstein, she wore a big, dark robe. And as Lady Gravenstein got shorter and shorter and shorter over the years, that robe got shorter and shorter and shorter where it rubbed against the dirt and the rocks and all the weeds there in Julian. And the weeds grabbed at it, so the bottom of that robe was all tattered. And you couldn't really tell anymore where the robe ended and where the dust began as old Lady Gravenstein thunk, thunk, her way into the marketplace. Well, old Lady Gravenstein, she went right up to Randall and she said, "Randall," and she kind of poked him with her walking stick. "Randall, spare an apple for an old lady." And Randall said, "No way. I know exactly how much work went into growing these apples. You can't have a single one, old Lady Gravenstein. You go on, shoo now. You get out." But old Lady Gravenstein, she did not shoo. And old Lady Gravenstein, she did not get out. And that set Randall to swearing and cursing, just like, well, maybe you've heard people swearing and cussing like this, but I'm not going to repeat what Randall said to old Lady Gravenstein in such polite company. But right now I want you to just imagine to yourself, what is the worst thing you can imagine being called by someone like Randall? That's what Randall called old Lady Gravenstein on that day. Now, Randall was making such a fuss, the deputy had to come in. He said, "Randall, you can't be making such a ruckus on a market day. Just give the old lady an apple." And the deputy gave Randall a coin, took an apple, and handed it to old Lady Gravenstein. Well, old Lady Gravenstein, she took that apple and she giggled. And she looked at everyone around the marketplace and she said, "Folks, those of us that ain't got enough, we don't understand when people who got too much don't share. So today, I got 100 apples to share with y'all, and you're welcome to them." Well, one of those miners standing around, he said, "Old Lady Gravenstein, if you had 100 apples this whole time, why'd you have to steal one from Randall?" And she said, "'Cause I needed one of these here seeds to grow this apple from." And with that, old Lady Gravenstein, she rested her cane against her body and she took to crunching off of that apple. And pretty soon there was just a little apple core left. And old Lady Gravenstein, she took a long yellow fingernail and she dug into that apple core and she dug out one of those pips. It was dark brown, almost black, and it was tiny. It's amazing how much can come out of such a tiny, tiny thing. Well, old Lady Gravenstein, she leaned on her cane and she got herself all the way down to the ground. And she used the sharp tip of that cane to dig a hole in that hard Julian earth up there. She took that apple pip and she dropped it down into the deepness of that hole. And then she took all that loose dirt and she covered it up again, patted it down. And then she took her, nope, that's not what she did. The next thing she did is she looked around everybody and she said, "Betty got a sip of water to spare for an old lady?" And she giggled. And that same miner, he said, "All right, I'm game. Let's see what this is about." And he handed her his spare canteen. Well, old Lady Gravenstein, she took that canteen, and first she took a big gulp, because it was a long, dusty walk from her shack to this here market. Then she took the rest of that canteen, she's down on her knees, and she poured all that water right over that loose dirt that she had packed down around the seed. She gave the man his canteen back, and she took that sharp point of her cane, and she dug it right down into the mud that she had just made. Well, by now, everyone in the marketplace is like, what is going on? This is the most interesting that's happened in so long. So they're all gathered around and they're watching old lady Gravenstein. But one by one, their attention shifts from old lady Gravenstein down to that cane that's stuck in that mud. And as they watch, they see that cane getting a little bit bigger around. And the edges of the cane used to be smooth where it was worn down by old lady Gravenstein holding it all the time. And now it was starting to get a little rough, a little tree-ish. And as they watch that cane getting tree-ish, starts to grow off branches. And off of those branches grow leaves, and off of those leaves grow pink and white apple blossoms. And out of each of those blossoms grows a piece of fruit. The juiciest, shiniest apples you've ever seen, hanging heavy on those tree limbs. And they were green like fresh grass, and yellow like a cat's eye, and some were so dark purple, it was like looking at the sky on a moonless night. Well, old lady Gravenstein, she hiked her way up to her feet again as she looked around at everyone and said, friends, I find myself with a couple of extra apples. You're welcome to them. And with that, she ran her hand up that tree branch, and one of those branches broke off in her hand. And she took that branch, and she thunk, thunk, thunk her way out of the marketplace. Well, these folks gathered around, free apples. Look at these beautiful apples. They're picking off the apples. They're handing apples back to those who can't reach. And everyone's biting into those apples, and they eat them, and they're apple juice. They're so juicy. It's running down their chins, and they got mud all down their throats. Well, soon all those apples been picked, and all those apples been eaten, all those cores tossed over shoulders, and everyone turns back to their work. And Randall turns back to his wheelbarrow. Used to be full of apples. But now, that wheelbarrow doesn't have a single apple or apple core or apple pip to be seen. Well, Randall took to swearing and cussing up a storm again. Deputy had to come out, kick him out of the marketplace altogether, which was fine. He didn't have anything left to sell. Well, friends, that was the last time anyone saw or smelled old lady Gravenstein. But folks swear that for hours afterward, they could hear her giggling.
Oh, Emily, that was lovely. That was amazing. And of course, all of your gestures and your movements and your eating the apples and everything was just delightful. That
Hey,
was
Sarah.
fabulous. And so we're all coming down to Julian, and you're going to take us out to the apple.
Please do. We actually, well, I'll talk about it at the end. Never mind.
Okay.
Stay
Thank you
tuned.
so
Spoiler.
much. Thank you so much. Just so appreciate your story. Oh, lovely, lovely. Wow, that was fabulous. Cynthia Cuddeback is our next storyteller. She started telling stories 30 years ago, around the same time she met her husband in graduate school. The themes of science, love, and story have run through her life ever since. Now, Cynthia says that Little Red Riding Hood is her favorite character, who learns all about wolves and eventually helps restore them to Yellowstone. I hope that's true. The story she has for tonight is The Three Little Pigs Go to San Francisco. Cynthia, the floor is yours.
After the wolf incident, the pig family got very deeply involved in construction. They built small, sturdy brick houses all over southern Germany, and every house was guaranteed wolf-proof. Now, this very successful business eventually allowed the pig family to move to Kansas, where they set up an auxiliary branch. And the local weather conditions were really well suited to these pig-built brick houses. They do some pretty heavy huffing and puffing with those tornadoes out there. And there was a moment in 1939 when Dorothy Gale's house made an unauthorized flight to the land of Oz, at which point the pig family motto was amended. It said, guaranteed, no flying and no technicolor. Well, a few years ago, it became time for the youngest members of the pig family to move on. And so the three youngest pigs packed up their satchels and moved to San Francisco, Baghdad by the Bay. Now, the oldest pig, heir to the pig fortune, went to the Marina District, where he built classic pig-built brick houses, guaranteed wolf-proof. The second little pig. Now, the second little pig, who, well, he considered himself something of a rebel, he built a grass shack down on Ocean Beach from which he sold wheatgrass smoothies, espresso drinks, and a discreet sideline in medicinal marijuana. The third little pig, well, he went over to Berkeley and started taking classes in holistic engineering and transcendental architecture. And he went to Tilden Park in the Berkeley Hills, and he gathered sticks. And he gathered his sticks together to form triangles. He put the triangles together until he had a dome. And that dome he then covered over with shingles, and he had a home which was a dome. And in that home, the third pig said, "Oh." Now, the three little pigs got together reasonably often. Now, the eldest pig was very frustrated because classic pig-built brick homes didn't seem to be selling very well in the Marina District. Now, the third little pig said, "You might want to consider looking into local architectural styles." But the first pig said, "No, no, no. If it's good enough for Kansas, it's good enough for San Francisco. Furthermore, we don't believe in evolution." The second little pig, well, he spoke rather shyly of his growing fondness for his dealer, a rather hairy young man named Wolf. The third little pig served tea and smiled. Well, into this peaceful world came, at some point it always does, the big, bad earthquake! And that house in the Marina District, the brick house, it went poop. And I am sorry to say that the first little pig has never been seen again. The grass shack down on the beach, well, it kind of went da-floofity, da-floof, floof, 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 floof. And the second little pig crawled out. He said, "Whoa, dude, that was gnarly." And he and Wolf moved to Napa, where they opened a bed and breakfast. The third little pig in that nice, sturdy, well-engineered wooden house, well, it kind of went But the pig is still there, and you can join me if you want, because you know what he said. He said, "Oh."
Oh, Cynthia, my goodness, my goodness. It's so nice to know what happened after the wolf incident. Sorry to hear about the one pig. Oh, well.
You got to learn to adapt.
And I forgot to
I
say
wrote
that.
that story when I was living on the East Coast, and I brought it back to San Francisco. And, you know, San Francisco audiences get it. I hope that those of you who are not in San Francisco still found something to enjoy.
Wonderful. I forgot to say that Cynthia's representing the Sacramento Storytelling Guild tonight. Thank you so much.
Because Ed asked me to come. Thank you, Ed.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's lovely. Well, I can't believe it, but it's our final storyteller of this evening. Bowen Lee is a member of the Asian American Storytellers in Action, ASIA, and has performed with them in person and virtually at National Storytelling Network conferences, the Bay Area Folk Festival with Ethnotech Presents, and the Orc Asian Storytelling Festival. Now, Bowen says that her favorite character, fairy tale character, is Coyote. She says, "Somehow I relate to a character that can't help but get into trouble." So thank you, Bowen. And Bowen's story tonight is What Dogs Have to Teach Us. Bowen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. In 5th century China, there were many temples all throughout the land. And one year, the high priest wanted to get all of the priests in all of the temples together at the high temple. So he sent messengers out throughout the land to tell each of the temple priests the plan to bring everybody together. One young messenger, a young monk, traveled long and far. He first went to the temple of the 1,000 Buddhas, and then to the temple of the Jade Pavilion, and finally to the temple of the Golden Valley. At the Temple of the Golden Valley, the head priest was an old priest with a long white beard. Yes, thank you for your message. Assure the head priest, the high priest, that I will come. He can count on me. And then the head priest treated the young monk cordially with great hospitality. And when the young monk was ready to leave, he turned to the old priest and said, Sifu, I have one more temple to visit. This is the temple of the Cloud Gate. It is across the desert and up a high mountain range. I have never been in the wilderness, and I fear I will get lost and my message will not be delivered. Sifu, is it possible that you could give me an escort? The old monk nodded his head. Oh, yeah, I can help. And he called for his servant. And the young monk was astonished as a dog trotted up to the old priest and sat at his feet. My friend, this young monk needs to go to the Cloud Gate Temple. You will take him safely to its gate. The dog wagged its tail and went by the door and waited for the young monk. The young monk was so astonished. At that time in China, there were not very many people who had pets, much less priests. The young monk didn't know what to say. But the old monk said, "It will be all right." And so what was the young monk to do but follow the dog? But as the young monk was going out of the temple, he was thinking, that old priest must have lost his mind. What he's given me this animal. I am a monk of the high temple. I'm an emissary of the high priest. Surely I deserve more respect and honor than that. Oh, what was this old guy thinking? And so at first, it did not go well for the dog and the young monk. When the dog wanted to go one way and the young monk disagreed, the young monk just went his own way. But he always got lost and in trouble often. He was beset by robbers. He was beset by a pack of wild dogs. But each time, the dog found him, rescued him, and brought him back to the right path. In the desert, it was dry. It was arid. The sun beat down. But the dog knew where there was water. And the dog would hunt for himself, and wherever he found small animals and flushed them out. The plants that the animals were hiding in were edible, and so the young monk had food as well. And so during the desert, the young monk learned to trust the dog. So by the time they came to the foothills of the great mountain peaks, the young man and the dog walked together. The dog knew the path, even though there was no trail marked. And together they helped each other in the steep climb. They fought off wild animals together. They helped each other to feed and find water for each other. And the young monk learned to appreciate the singing of the birds in the trees and all of the ways that nature communicated with itself. he became a part of that communication. He saw that he was a part of this natural world. But what he enjoyed most of all was at night sitting at the fire with a dog and looking up at the sky, all of the stars, and at night sleeping with the dog to keep each other warm. So by the time they got to the gate of the Cloud Gate Temple, the young monk had learned many things. First of all, he realized that as a monk, he had thought himself on a very high spiritual plane, everyone below him. And he realized that his attitude towards others was his attitude toward life. But he had learned to appreciate other beings, the world, and see how connected everything was, including himself, a part of this connection, a part of nature. But most of all, he learned that when you share your life with another being, that is the greatest happiness of all.
Oh, Bowen, thank you so much. What a beautiful story to close out this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ah. Well, now I'm going to ask Prakrati to bring back the storytellers, and we'll hear what's coming up next for them. And then if y'all have questions or comments or thoughts that you'd like to address to the tellers, we have some time for that as well. So let me start with Laura. Laura, what do you have coming up that you want to share with us?
Nothing. I wait a second. I do go to the Do Tell Story Swap regularly. I'm just getting back into storytelling, so I really don't have any performances or anything like that lined up. Just
But where
having
are
some
your
fun.
books available?
I have a website, lauramchaleholland.com. And yeah, that's where my books are.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Emil, what's up with you? What's happening next?
I'm in the same nothing boat with Laura. I'm just coming back to this, and I do plan to try to get to the Ojai Storytelling Festival. It'll be actually my first storytelling festival, so I'm kind of excited about that. Maybe I will learn things and hobnob and all that. Maybe get some free food. So, you never know.
And do you want to say a few words about Story Masters?
Story Masters is a LA club. It meets mostly online, and you can just join in. It's on the second and the fourth Sundays at 3:00. So that's it.
If folks have questions, we can get in touch. That'd be lovely. Thank you. Miss Emily.
Yeah, hi. So Storytellers of San Diego, we are pretty busy. I'm very grateful that we are so busy. In October, I'm doing a series of workshops and a concert that's on Haunted Julian. So it's going to be in Julian, where my story took place, up here in the mountains of San Diego. And we're going to teach folks to create their own ghost story, how to tell a good ghost story, and then at the end, we'll do a concert that will incorporate some of our professional storytellers and also those workshop participants. It's going to be super fun. It's all free. And then make sure we've got a bunch of stuff happening in Chula Vista. If anyone is in Chula Vista throughout September and October, a lot of like spooky stories happening there. We are, of course, doing a celebration here down in the Ocean Beach area. We've got a storytelling institute, a class for military members, of course, San Diego being a big military area. We're looking at a storytelling institute in Encinitas and at Coronado through like November. We have our big storytelling festival in March, and then I think that's it'll be the 17th, I believe. I think it's St. Patrick's Day, and then we have a standing monthly concert in Ocean Beach as well, and you can see all of that on our website.
Wow. And I'm going to ask all of you to put in either your email or your website to the chat, that would be just lovely so folks can get in touch. Miss Cynthia, what's up with you?
Well, storytelling is my second favorite thing to do. My favorite thing is I'm a science educator and looking for classrooms, churches, anything that might be able to use a little bit of climate education. I'm offering that for free. So if you're interested in, especially if your church wants to get active in helping the climate, that's something that my church has done a lot of. Or if you're students, if you know students in high school who want to learn more, drop me a line. I will put in my website.
So high school and adults, or where you're aiming?
Well, since this group is all over the place for an online thing, it ought to be high school and adults. I'm also very interested in working with kids in the Bay Area. So if you've got grandkids or something in Oakland, that's also awesome.
All right, thank you, thank you. Bowen, I know you've just moved. What else is coming up?
In October, I'm doing Kind Stories in concert. I
Nice.
think that's at the beginning of October. And then on October 17th, I'll be doing Greenville, Chautauqua. I'll be doing a virtual performance of Junko Tabe. And I believe that's a free event if you'd like to check that out. And then towards the end of October, I'll be doing Stories for Climate Change at Point Lobos State Reserve. So that'll be a full day of doing stories at Point Lobos.
Right, right. So any information any of you can put in the chat about how to get in touch with you and or the events that you've mentioned, that would be helpful because I'm sure there are folks who are interested. So I'm gonna close this part, and I need to recognize